Dallas is booming, and we all know that. I mean, you've got all the jobs, the no state income tax, and one of the strongest economies in the country. But quietly and behind the scenes, massive shifts in the housing market are underway. And if you don't understand them before buying, you could make a huge mistake. Just as an example, let's talk about foreclosures. In the first quarter of 2025, foreclosure filings are up in a big way in DFW, but it's not how you might think, okay? I often describe how housing here is micro-local, right? It's gonna be crashing here, correcting here, still way overpriced over here. Well, that's how it's turning out to be with our foreclosures too, okay? When you look at it, they're concentrated in specific areas. And these buyers, okay, they never went into a home purchase thinking that they were gonna end up in foreclosure. I mean, they have just been absolutely blindsided by it. But what we want here, okay, is we want this to not happen to you. But I also want you to be able to possibly benefit from it by getting an amazing deal. If you think about it, anytime you have a market shift, it's cause for caution, but it's also going to have grounds for opportunity. Well, mortgagecalculator.org completed a study, okay? It was called the 15 largest US metropolitan areas ranked by the percentage of residents likely to be evicted or foreclosed upon in 2024. Now, their goal was to do a nationwide analysis to shed light on where residents are facing the highest likelihood of evictions or foreclosures. Well, in their study, all right, not only did DFW rank in the top 15, okay, you ready for this? It ranked first place. Now, I should say, because accuracy is important, okay, I do want to point out again, okay, let's clarify here that these aren't actual foreclosures, it's the likelihood of evictions and foreclosures. It's how many individuals are cost burdened and getting behind on their payments. So think about that. Cost burdened. For whatever reason, a lender said they were qualified, all right, but now they're not, okay? Now they're cost burdened and they're at risk. Still, to the extent that foreclosures are a cause for caution, they can also be a huge opportunity. And so I want you to be aware of that. Partly because you could get a great deal on it, but also partly, that if you attempt it, you could get burned. So if you want to take advantage of a foreclosure, okay, there are a few things you should know, and so let's go ahead and walk through that. First off, buying one is a completely different experience than what you're used to. I mean, walking into the home will not feel like your typical showing. Many times there won't be power or running water. Like, you want to go during the day so you can get as much natural light as possible, but you still need to bring a flashlight. The condition is always a wild card, okay? At the very least, expect dust, dirt, okay, and a few dead roaches. So this is not a model home experience. You have to look past any mess and try to see the bones of the property. Submitting an offer is also going to be different. The contract usually has extra parts to it, and dissecting that thing is critical. All right, now most agents are just gonna hand it to you and say, well, read it, let me know if you have any questions. Okay, I need you to know that's not enough. Now, personally, our brokerage, we always sit down for a contract review, and that matters even more when you're talking about a foreclosure. You also need to know offers are not sent directly to the listing agent. All right, they're usually going to be submitted through an online portal. Sometimes the bank will collect offers for a set period of time before making a decision, so the process is gonna take longer. Also, inspection process, okay, that's going to be another curveball. In Texas, all right, we call this the option period, but every foreclosure comes with its own rules. Sellers almost never agree to repairs. If you uncover a deal breaker, all right, like you're like, oh, this condition is just no, it's not going to work for me. All right, you're going to be out $450 for the inspection, and then back to square one, and kind of going along with that. Remember, you only got to see the place without utilities. So you're stepping in with limited information before you hire that inspector. Even the way your agent gets paid is different. All right, since the NAR settlement, buyers have to sign a representation agreement with their realtor, and that agreement lists exactly what the agent charges, okay? You don't always have to be the one to pay it, but you do have to own it. And what I mean by that is that you as the buyer have to make sure that your agent gets paid somehow. Now, most buyers prefer the seller to cover it, But bank-owned properties, okay, they often push back. In fact, in almost every foreclosure listing I reviewed while I was making this video, all right, the seller required the buyer's agent to pay a fee just to represent you in the sale, okay? They call it an offer submission technology fee. So now we're in this strange situation where buyers may need to pay out of pocket just to have an agent help them buy, and the agents actually having to pay out of pocket themselves. And that's why many agents won't even touch foreclosures, because the fee structure doesn't work in their favor. You can lose money in this process, okay? But the opportunities are incredible. I mean, here's an example of one. Just last month in Weatherford, a builder lost all of these homes to foreclosure, and they were on like 2-acre lots too. Well, these homes, they sold for as little as $259,000. Okay, so we're talking about brand new construction on 2 acres, and these homes closed for $259,000. Now, right now across DFW, there are almost 550 foreclosures on the market. So this is a shift that is definitely worth paying attention to. Okay, now we need to talk about something really important, okay? Let's talk about NIMBY. And if you're not familiar with that term, okay, it stands for not in my backyard. And I tell you what, this is tied to a massive shift in Texas right now, and it just came out of the legislature. So if you are considering buying a home that has any exposure whatsoever to green space, okay, you need to pay attention to this. Texas has been pushing hard to make housing more affordable. And one of the ways they've tried to do that is through House Bill 24. Now, what did they actually accomplish with that? Well, they basically took away a neighborhood's voice, all right? So imagine you've got this community with large lots, mature trees, and homeowners who take pride in their property. Then picture a developer stepping in, wanting to cram 200 homes on tiny 30-foot lots with no limit on how many could be turned into rentals. In the past, neighbors could band together and stop that. They could gather signatures, attend city council meetings, and shut a project down. Like, I know this because my own neighborhood has done this several times when a builder wanted to pack homes onto land that just didn't fit for it. But with this new law, all right, Texas raised the requirements. They increased the protest threshold for zoning changes from 20% of adjacent landowners to 60%. And that makes it far harder for a small group of homeowners to block a developer. And it doesn't stop there. Senate Bill 15 also passed, and that law prohibits cities from requiring homes in new developments over 5 acres to be built on lots larger than 3,000 square foot. And on top of that, developers must be allowed to build homes with at least 3 floors of 10 feet each. So combine the two laws and the message is clear. Neighborhoods have less power to fight back, and cities have less power to enforce lot size restrictions. Now think about what that could mean. I mean, how would you feel about a 3-story home towering over your backyard while your kids play outside? I mean, this is a huge shift. And if you're looking at property next to green space, okay, you need to think twice. Like, find out if that green space is owned by the HOA and permanently designated, or if it's owned by a third party. Because if it is not locked in as permanent green space, okay, you need to know that peaceful view behind your house could turn into your biggest nightmare. Now, home sellers are not happy right now, and we need to talk about that because that frustration is shifting the market in a big way. We are seeing canceled listings climb to levels we've never seen before. According to Sydney Lake, many home sellers are struggling in today's housing market, as shown by delistings skyrocketing 47% year over year in June. Sellers are pulling their homes off the market when they don't get the price they want. Now, experts say this isn't always about desperation. I mean, a lot of times it's just a strategic move. Even so, a lot of sellers expected to cash out and walk away with a nice profit, but the market isn't letting that happen. Here in Dallas, the trend is just as strong. M&D Real Estate reports that in July alone, Dallas County had 885 listing cancellations in 30 days. All right, that's a 42% jump from last year. Rockwall County is up 51%, and Collin County is even higher at 57%. So what happens to these sellers after they cancel? All right, well, most of the time they just stay put. All right, many are sitting on mortgage rates around 3%, so they decide it wasn't meant to be and they just kind of move on with life. You can actually track this metric through canceled contracts. When sellers cancel listings, it often turns into canceled purchase contracts too. And many of these sellers were planning to buy a new home contingent on selling their current one. And when that sale fell through, so did their purchase. Well, that creates opportunities. In new construction especially, builders think they've got a buyer lined up only to see the contract fall apart when the buyer can't sell their home. Those homes can come back on the market as good deals. Now let's talk for a minute about what we could expect to see if our market shifts due to mortgage rates going down. Now fortunately, we don't have to guess about this since this just happened last year. Dallas has a lot of pent-up buyers and it does seem to have a deflection point. Between September and December of last year, we saw mortgage rates drop in the third and fourth quarters. Beginning in July, rates sat at 6.95%. They began a steady decline at that point until by the end of September, they were at 6.08%. From there, they began their steady march upward until they capped out in mid-January at 7.04%. Well, now that we understand that trend, what we want to know is how the Dallas market responded to it. From June through September, we saw the expected seasonal decline we always see. Dallas is just so predictable that way. In June, prices peak, then by January, they bottom out with steady incline and then declines in between. Well, June to September did exactly what we would expect. Then October to December, we saw home prices rise. And it shows up as this curious little arc that defies seasonality. Now think about this. When a buyer goes under contract, it's typically 4 to 6 weeks before a sale is recorded. Our October price increase is from our homes that went under contract from mid-August to the 1st of September. So what we saw is rates dropping from August through October. Then approximately 6 weeks later, we saw prices rising from October through December. Then we saw the amount of homes for sale and the month's supply dropping. So the market shifted very quickly, and it was during the fall when prices would usually be going down. So I love it when the data tells a story. Now we don't have to guess what the mortgage rate needs to be to bring buyers into the market. By the time rates were around like 6.35%, our home prices had begun going up, our amount of homes available for sale went down, and our month's supply went down. When interest rates reversed course, heading back up towards 7, the market returned to a stagnant and correcting state. So what does the data tell us? Well, 6.3% is definitely a trigger, all right? Buyers enter the market en masse, even if it's in the fall and winter. Rates at 6.3% in the spring and summer probably would have been even more dramatic. So if the Fed's actions trigger mortgage rate cuts in September this year and we drop back to 6.3, we can have a reasonable idea of what to expect. We'll know how quickly it will happen and with what level of intensity. If we see mortgage rate cuts in the spring and summer, such as the whole, like Trump replacing Powell in spring thing, we could expect the intensity to be stronger since it'll be backed by seasonality. Spring and summer are when you always have more buyers in the market anyway. This would be a market shift too, so let's talk about some real negatives you don't want to be blindsided by. First off, expect sellers to push back on paying the buyer agent commission. Right now in the post-NAR settlement era, right, the buyer has to accept responsibility for ensuring his agent gets paid. Now in Dallas, what we've seen in our personal brokerage, all right, is that sellers are more than happy to pay those fees. Like it's more like there's kind of like overflowing with gratitude if we bring them a buyer. Try to picture it this way. A seller agreeing to pay a buyer broker's fee is their marketing budget. Okay, so when there are more buyers, you can expect to see sellers less willing to spend broker fees in their marketing budget. In other words, their marketing budget doesn't need to be as big. This doesn't just go for individual sellers either. The same is definitely true of builders. As of the making of this video, our buyers personally haven't encountered any Dallas builders yet who are unwilling to pay the buyer broker's fee. So expect that to become a lot more difficult when mortgage rates drop and the market winds change. Speaking of builders, you need to know they are not your friends, okay? Neither are investors. Now, individual sellers, on the other hand, they can sometimes have a compassionate side. Like, they can sometimes be persuaded to make a decision that helps a buyer out of compassion. Like, sometimes their decisions will be subjective. With both builders and investors, all right, it is not that way at all. It is a cutthroat world, and you need to expect that. And I'm not saying that they're evil or nefarious or anything like that. This is just a business, and at the end of the day, what they care about is profit. So what is that going to look like? Well, expect the rate specials to dry up first, okay? Your forward commitments of 4%, fixed rate for 30 years, those are going to be gone, okay? They're going to evaporate. If rates are dropping fast and a builder says he only has a few forward commitments left, you should believe them. Like, usually I am all about holding out and negotiating aggressively. But if rates are dropping fast, okay, you need to know those forward commitments will be gone and they're not going to be renewed. Forward commitments cost between $24,000 to $30,000 per house for the builder. And this is among the most expensive incentives builders offer. So you can expect those to be the first to go. Now, I want to give you an example of this in real time because it just happened to us this week. All right, so first let me set the backdrop. All right, mortgage rates as of the 1st of June were 6.89%. All right, they have since dropped to 6.52%. So that's not a huge amount, but it's a drop nonetheless. The general prediction is that the Fed will lower rates the end of September, right? So that's kind of leading to this buzz of excitement that mortgage rates will follow suit. All right, well, here's what happened. Beazer Homes emailed our client with a rate special. They were offering a 3-2-1 buy down in addition to a forward commitment. And this is the biggest special that we see in our incentive specials. Like, our buyer could have a 1.99% rate the first year, a 2.99% the second year, 3.99% the third year, and then a 4.99% fixed rate for the rest of the mortgage. Now, that is an amazing incentive coming from a motivated builder. Now, the ad specifically mentioned the community that our buyers were interested in. So we reached out to Beazer on behalf of our clients, and they said the home our buyers were interested in didn't qualify. That the only way our buyer could get the buy down was by adding $20,000 to the purchase price. When we asked Beazer which homes did qualify, okay, you ready for this? They said none of them did. Like, literally, Beazer sent an ad mentioning a specific community, and from the time they sent out the ad to the time we asked, they said not a single one of the homes that they had specifically included in the ad actually qualified. That the only way you could get the incentive would be by adding $20,000 to the list price. I mean, that kind of sounds like false advertising, right? I mean, we were pretty incredulous, and when we disputed it, the sales consultant threw out the whole ambiguous, select homes wildcard. And we were like, yes, but you said there were select homes in this specific community on the ad. And now you're saying none of them qualify without raising the price by $20,000. When you look at the market analysis, Beazer has been accepting offers as low as 88% of the list price in this community. They should be motivated. But they get a whiff of the market winds changing and mortgage rates dropping, and they pull way back. Okay, another thing you can expect when the market shifts, whether we like it or not, is we're probably going to see prices go up, and they're probably going to go up pretty quickly. It was amusing seeing this happen last fall. Like, builders were very quickly raising their prices around October, and then just as quickly they were having a rapid change of heart by January. The forward commitments, the rate buy downs, the generous money towards closing costs. All right, think of it this way. All right, the person who shakes your hand in the model home, they may seem friendly enough, okay? But to their bosses, this is about profit, okay? You are essentially a dollar sign. They are not going to be reasonable. They are not going to be understanding, okay? They don't care if your heart is broken, okay? There's no empathy here. And buyers were blindsided by this in 2021, and then to a lesser degree this past fall. What you want as a home buyer is to be strategic, to anticipate the shifts and not be taken in by them. Now, if you understand now how important it is to know your market, okay? Don't stop here. I have an entire playlist of analyzing the housing market, all right? You can catch those videos right here. In the meantime, this is Wendy Pinnell, and I will catch you on the next video.